Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting for the 6th, or rather the 4th of June. Councillor Cloutier is not with us today as his son is graduating, so that's good news for him. Declaration of interest, déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès verbaux le 10 mai, 10th of May 2019. Carried. Presentation. We have a presentation from Invest Ottawa on the talent program. Then a presentation on the Confederation line. The city treasurer's verbal report on financing has been postponed because of the change that the province brought forward a week or so ago. Corporate services, corporate finance service, financing lease agreements for 2018. Carried. 2018 Investments Endowment Fund and Other Treasury Activity Report, rapport sur le Fonds d'investissement et de dotation sur les autres activités de la Trésorerie de 2018. Carried. Office of the City Clerk and Solicitor, Bureau du Greffier municipal et de l'Avocat général, Service législatif, Status update, Finance and Economic Development Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending May 17th. Rapport de situation, demande de renseignements et motions du Comité des finances et de développement économique pour la période se terminer le 17 mai 2019. Received. Policy and Technical Solutions Services, Service politique et solutions technicales, 2018 year-end MFIPA report. Received. Item 8, City of Ottawa ward boundary review. I think we have one or two questions, so we'll come back to that, because I think there may be there's a motion as well. Community and Social Services, Direction Générale des Services Sociaux et Communautaires, Housing Services, Service des Logements, that we declare declaration of surplus property, 159 Forward Avenue, Bowman Street at Hinchy Avenue, and 2040 Arrowsmith Drive, and that the delegated authority to transfer these surplus real properties for the development of affordable housing. That's in Beacon Hill, Searville, and Kitchissippi. Carried. Next, we have information previously received, motion on the BIAs, and we'll come back to the first presentation. So I think Councillor Leeper had raised this question at budget time on the talent initiative that Invest Ottawa is working on. And we thought it would be appropriate that Invest Ottawa come forward and speak to one of their great priorities is obviously attracting and retaining talent to the nation's capital. And so we have Susan Richards, who is my co-chair at Invest Ottawa, and Sonia Shorey, Vice President Strategy, Marketing and Communications, and Natalie MacArthur, Director of Talent. So if they could come forward, and it's great to see our team from Invest Ottawa. They've been doing some great work. I know, I think I mentioned this before, but Jan was, there she is right over there. The Invest Ottawa folks put together a really good opening of the autonomous vehicle test site, which is the same site as where the movie theater is going to break ground later this year. And Jan was the driving force obviously behind that, but with the great support of Invest Ottawa and many other partners, I couldn't believe the turnout. There must have been, 600 people there, and it was quite a sight. So congratulations, and I think Invest Ottawa just won an award, if I'm not mistaken, for Best Direct, what was it, Sonia? Foreign Direct Investment, yeah, great. So just push the button there. So Susan, as you may know, is the co-chair. I have the honor of being the other co-chair of Invest Ottawa, and welcome, and the floor is yours for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Watson.
Just push your button there.
Okay, can we hear me now? Wonderful. Good morning, Mayor Watson and councillors. Bonjour à tous. My name, as has been said, is Susan Richards. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Number Crunch and the co-chair at Invest Ottawa's board. I am delighted to introduce you to Sonia Shori, who's our Invest Ottawa's Vice President of Strategy, Communications and Marketing, as well as Natalie MacArthur, who's our Director of Talent Attraction. Our main intention today, make sure that I got them. Main intention of our presentation today is to provide you with an update on our knowledge-based economy strategy and talent plan. We're going to provide a progress update as well as areas of future potential this program, this work will have on local startups and accelerated scale-ups in the Ottawa region. We also like to take the opportunity to thank the City of Ottawa because we wouldn't have gotten this far and we wouldn't be able to proceed without the support engagement of the city. The worldwide talent shortage is a global phenomenon. A recent study by A.T. Kearney has found that there could be 82 million unfilled jobs and 8.2 trillion in unrealized revenue by 2030. Here in Canada, KPMG has reported that we're on track for a major technology talent shortage in the next 5 years. As well, the war on talent continues to increase.
We, of course, wanted to put this challenge into context here in the Ottawa region. And so working together with partners such as BDC and our post-secondary institutions, we've gathered additional data that supports that raging war on talent. 40% of Ottawa-based entrepreneurs have difficulty hiring in the last 12 months. By 2021, Ontario's technology employment will hit 670,000 jobs, with 1 out of every 6 potentially going unfilled. And of course, here in Ottawa, attracting a skilled workforce is the second largest challenge facing Ottawa businesses, according to the Ottawa Business Growth Survey. These are at the heart of our strategy for talent acquisition, retention, and development, and we are very grateful to have your support to enable us to address this directly. We recognize that together with all of the incredible partners and talent we have across this region, that the availability of homegrown talent is not sufficient to meet the hiring requirements of the companies in this region. To fully maximize the generous contribution that you're making together with other partners, we're adopting an integrated approach for impact that leverages the great strengths that Invest Ottawa has to bring to bear across all of our divisions. Our venture development team, which is dedicated to entrepreneurs, SMEs, and scale-ups, helping them to launch, grow, and succeed commercially. Our global expansion team, which goes out into the world to attract investment, talent, and companies that will augment the strengths and create new jobs in our region. Our marketing and communications team, which I am so proud to lead, with our Work in Ottawa campaign shining an incredible spotlight on the talent, the companies, and the opportunities we have in this region to thrive. Our corporate services team, which is the horsepower that enables us to deliver. Talent will touch and bring together all of these divisions and the strengths that they have and enable us to help our region develop, attract, and retain the top talent we need to be more competitive globally. Of course, we require incredible collaboration and the insight and input from many of partners across our region, across our province, and throughout Canada. You can see here just a sampling of the partners we have engaged to gather insight on the key challenges that we face as a region when it comes to the talent shortage. These also represent our key collaborators and partners that will help us to deliver the strategy in many different ways. Several partners joining us today, including Canada North Business Association. Very grateful for that support, together with our post-secondary institutions and other organizations that are enabling us to tap into talent pools that bring to bear some of the diversity and inclusion goals that we have established for our region. We have an incredible foundation to build upon. I am certain every councillor here is aware of our Why Ottawa presentation that really showcases the incredible strengths we have as a region. Just a few key statistics that promote our strengths when it comes to the talent base we're building on. CBRE published a report that I love to discuss and describe that looks at 50 North American major centers and their talent acquisition and momentum. Ottawa has the highest concentration of tech talent out of 50 North American cities that were surveyed at 11.2% of all jobs. That is ahead of San Francisco at 9.8%. We have the second largest concentration of science and engineering employment out of 316 North American cities. We're surpassed only by Silicon Valley. We have the most educated workforce in this country. 61% of our labor force holds a post-secondary degree, and that's attributed to the incredible post-secondary institutions that we have in this region that have a combined student population of 130,000 students, spanning Algonquin, Carleton University, La Cité Collégiale, University of Ottawa, and Willis College. And our post-secondary institutions are creating an incredible pipeline of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programs that allow us to build that pipeline of next-generation talent, 1,200 faculty, 27,000 STEM students. We've got a fantastic base to build upon. And as we look at that base and we look at how we augment that and help to address the technology gaps in our region, we look at our expertise and our strengths and the jobs of the future, the knowledge-based, high-value jobs of the future that span autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, data analytics, the Internet of Things, precision agriculture, and next-generation networks. His Worship Mayor Watson highlighted the autonomous and connected vehicle test track that we have launched together with critical support from the City of Ottawa, a multitude of industry multinational partners, and many other contributors and collaborators across this region. When you look at the 7 technology areas on that screen, every single one of them comes into play at the test track that you've helped us to develop. We need to build a base of the technology talent that will attract more connected and autonomous vehicle companies to our region, attract more talent so we can build that business, attract more investment, and thrive as a region in that sector, which represents, in the next 5 to 6 years, over a $500 billion market. Of course, other attributes that enable us to attract and retain the top talent that we have are incredible cost of living. Mercer, a well-known reputable source, 2018, the cost of living in Canada is the lowest of all. Our quality of life is second to none. We have the best overall city in Canada based on 3 key T's: technology, talent, and tolerance. Again, a very critical attribute to support our diversity and inclusion strategy at Invest Ottawa and as a region.
As we know, for decades, the knowledge-based economy in the Ottawa region has become a center of excellence. And with 1,000 firms operating at different levels of growth and maturity, it's not only our privilege, but our obligation to work in collaboration and to support these firms with achieving their goals. We recognize through what Sonia and Susan mentioned, the war on talent and the talent shortage in the Ottawa region is preventing these firms from being able to scale and succeed. The opportunity that we have with our talent program is to be able to partner with these fast-growing early-stage startups and scale-ups by acting as an extension of their HR teams, supporting them with proactive, strategic sourcing opportunities to acquire the very best talent that they need so that they can do their very best work. We will be introducing a modest fee for the service, but providing these scale-up firms with the opportunity to access HR experts and our talent program services. Our strategy will be to continue to partner with service providers in the city on the pre-arrival, settled, and unemployed highly skilled talent that exists here, but to also source the very best talent from across the country and internationally. Whether it be those expatriate Canadians thinking about the opportunity to return home, or the highly skilled international talent that our ecosystem would benefit from having here. We want to be able to provide the knowledge-based industries with the talent capacity in ways that they had not yet had up until this point. We will, of course, be leveraging all of the great work that has existed on the talent file and that will continue to be created, and very grateful for the Board of Trade, Canada North, and ICTC for their continued support and collaboration, and for their support with being here in the room with us today. Our strategy will be to also think about ways where we can not only communicate effectively with talent globally, but continue to inspire talent right here in the region. We'll be elevating our Work in Ottawa site, we'll be hosting high-impact events, and we will be creating talent marketing campaigns that will increase the level of engagement, awareness, and interest for Ottawa as the next destination for these individuals in terms of the best place to live, work, study, and play. A lot has happened in a relatively short amount of time since we have undertaken work on this file. The strategic development process in terms of best practice research, partnering with our key stakeholders and clients to determine opportunities for collaboration and validation. This led us to a pivotal point in time where we were very comfortable and confident in the strength of the offer that we've created in the talent program. The next step was to socialize the formal details with Councillor Suds, and we thank you very much for your feedback and your support, and the approval that we acquired from Mayor Watson, and we thank you for that, Mayor Watson. We then proceeded to the soft launch phase, which was an integral interim stage that had the opportunity for us to partner with a small subset of clients to source the very best talent for them and to be able to gauge the strength and opportunities of the program ahead of our public launch, which is scheduled and still on track for July 1st. By the end of calendar year, we will have redesigned and redeveloped our Work in Ottawa site, and we'll be working very closely with our program leads, Shayla Doherty and Matt Caravel, on the year in review, the strengths and the opportunities for our forward outlook from 2020 onwards. The beauty of this program is that it's also been designed to be exceptionally agile and iterative, and so the feedback that we will acquire from clients, candidates, key stakeholders, from qualitative and quantitative approaches will allow us to pivot in ways that will increase the impact that we'll be delivering for the community. Early wins, as seen on this slide, have been many. We've had the pleasure of collaborating with over 100 key stakeholders to determine areas of opportunity and collaboration, conducted a number of workshops to answer any outstanding questions that they may have, and have since been presented with a number of public speaking engagements which will allow us to continue to promote the talent program. We socialized the program with over 20 clients to, again, gauge their levels of feedback and validation, and very excited to have partnered with 5 clients in the soft launch phases, and a number more are excited and anticipating the July 1st public launch. We've implemented the technologies that allow us to execute on the strategy. And just last month, we co-hosted an event with HackerX, which saw 60 developers and 15 clients make their way to Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards for a matchmaking event. We will continue to execute on this tactic. The local, the national, and the international event strategy is one that is exceptionally effective. And we're very excited to partner with IRCC and Pôle emploi this and next month on reviewing the shortlist of candidates from France that are interested in moving to the Ottawa region and supporting our knowledge-based industries from the intermediate and senior levels. We also traveled to Toronto to co-lead an employer branding session with them, and we are just determining where we can fit that into the program. And up until now, we've had the opportunity to work with Ascent Compliance and Farm Lead, 2 of our clients in the room, on presenting them with shortlists of high-caliber candidates, and they'll be happy to present a testimonial at the end of the presentation. Since we launched our sourcing strategies in the last 6 weeks, we have seen a tremendous amount of interest locally, across the country, and internationally. And this is very much validating the hypothesis that we had about Ottawa as the best place to live, work, study, and play. In the client validation process, it was very important for us to gauge where we were going to focus our time to be as specifically mindful as possible. And what we realized was the same roles are continuing to come up for a number of organizations across marketing, product, engineering, and sales at the intermediate to 10-year experience mark. We wanted to be as mindful as a talent team to be able to support them with those reoccurring needs and building talent pools that will solidify the pipelines for them now and in the future. And that's where we're going to drive that impact. And so we wanted to thank you again, Mayor Watson and councillors, for the opportunity to design and execute this program. We are guided by our vision to help realize Ottawa's full potential as a globally recognized, innovative, and future-ready city, and the best place to learn, work, live, and play now and for future generations. We are convinced that this talent program is the next milestone with helping us achieve that vision, and we're very excited. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Very impressive. Questions or comments? Councillor Dudas, Councillor Kavanaugh, Councillor Harder. No, it's okay. Councillor Dudas, please.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's absolutely phenomenal. I had 2 quick questions. One, I was just wondering, you know, we rank so highly in terms of quality of life and just the experience of living in the city, but what do you think are the main issues that are causing our businesses, our companies to feel that they can't attract and retain? Like, what is it that's holding our city back specifically? And then my second question is, how does Ottawa compare in terms of other jurisdictions in terms of that very thing, in terms of retaining and attracting?
I'd love to open up with this. So I think globally, it's an incredibly challenging time to attract the type of talent that's needed. Many companies are sourcing the exact same type of talent, and they're seeking senior talent that have the ability and proven track record to do exactly what is required. So if companies don't have the right reach, if they don't have the right visibility into those candidates, and many of them are not job seekers, there are those that are being solicited on a continual basis. When I've been in Silicon Valley doing foreign direct investment missions, I have CEOs who walk over and say, this is my senior technology architect. He receives an offer every single hour with incremental bonuses and signing opportunities that are far beyond what I could pay, and therefore they need to create a culture that allows them to attract and retain. Part of the talent program that we didn't touch on is the training and mentorship that comes along with the sourcing that we're doing, so that companies have the ability to do those incremental steps in terms of building the right type of culture, attracting and retaining that right talent. Secondly, I would say in terms of how Ottawa fares compared to others in Canada, I've personally worked very closely with our colleagues at Mars in Toronto and Communitech in Waterloo. We're grateful to have been the recipient of the new Scale-Up program. We announced $16.9 million to support our scale-ups here in Ottawa as part of a $52 million program. I can assure you that Toronto and Waterloo have the exact same challenge. We are all facing that issue. And in fact, FedDev's executive team has seen just the tip of the iceberg in terms of this strategy, and they're prepared to actually hold us up as a model here in Ottawa within our Scale-Up program as having taken very strategic steps to try and attract, retain, and develop, building on the base that we have across the country, not just here in Ontario. So it's a step in the right direction. This is a journey. All regions that we have the privilege of working with are struggling with this exact issue. That's why we're focusing on global talent with Ottawa roots that we want to attract home to Ottawa. Merci.
Councillor Cavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Recently in our own audit committee, should I stand up so you can see who I am? We heard about the shortage of IT expertise. We're having, issues trying to attract a CIO for our own city. And part of it is just the whole talent pool is just not there in terms of, getting people. And then when we do, they get snapped up because they're in high demand. But my question to you is what efforts are being made to attract more women into IT and STEM? We may be having a great big talent pool right under our nose that we're not tapping into. Do we know if there's stumbling blocks for women, for example, childcare, that prevent them from getting into it? Are we reaching out to the high schools, and are we reaching out to the universities and colleges to encourage them? Because I truly believe that there is a huge talent pool right under our nose that we're not taking advantage of, and what can we do to help that?
I would love to open up with this and then invite our co-chair, Susan Richards, to jump in. I'm so excited because we at Invest Ottawa, and recognizing the challenges that we face with respect to not just women in tech and STEM, but female founders and women-owned business, have established a subcommittee of our board with representatives and leaders from across industry, academia, government, and the investment community to help us address these exact challenges. Over the last year, we've developed a strategy with an action plan with 4 axes that also includes encouraging more women to enter technology-based fields. Many of us volunteer our time with organizations such as Technovation, myself included, that stimulates young women to develop an app, to pitch, and to pursue that career path in entrepreneurship in a technology field. It's a very exciting time for us. We are working closely with all 4 post-secondary institutions to create opportunities for women, both at Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards, and encouraging and bringing that focus not only to our global sourcing efforts, which is another key differentiator for our talent strategy, but working with our startups, our scale-ups, and other companies we serve from a global expansion perspective to keep that very important lens in mind. A diverse team, a highly integrated team, is a higher performance and a more profitable team and business, and that's something that we strongly encourage, and we would love to come back and deliver our strategy to you on that exact front and some of the early wins we've seen to date. Susan, I would invite you to join me.
I think you've done a remarkable job. I would just add that inclusivity is a key proponent of this, and attracting the talent and inspiring more women to go into technology sector and in leadership positions has to be met with an inclusive environment.
Yeah,
The
thank you
one
very much.
additional point I might raise is we believe that if you can see her, you can be her. We're shining a big spotlight promotionally on female founders, women in tech, leaders such as Susan Richards, such as Kira Torko, who's the vice president here with us today from Ascent Compliance, and many others that we work with in our ecosystem.
Thank you. Do we have any stats on percentage of women, and are you sort of looking at that to make sure that it grows? I'd also like to know about retention, because it's one thing to get women attracted to a profession, but to hold on to them. And do we do exit interviews to find out if there's any issues? I'd like to know if what's holding it back.
One of
Thank you. So you're working on some on data to show what the statistics are right now, so we can see that perhaps maybe at the next meeting, that you next time you come by. That'd be great. It'd be good to know where you're starting from, to know where you're going to.
Exactly.
Okay, I appreciate that, and let us know how we can work together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. One quick question. Thank you for your presentation. Can you just describe your work with the federal government, which is the #1 employer in this city? Are you exclusively working with private sector companies? And if not, can you just describe your work with the federal government?
Our talent strategy does focus on companies. However, as Michael Tremblay, our president and CEO, has elaborated on in the strategic plan and in a presentation last year that was delivered to this committee, GovTech is an area of focus for us, and it is one of the key 3 strategic areas we are diving into: smart cities, including connected and autonomous vehicles, smart health, and smart government. Certainly, we are working in very collaborative ways here at Bayview and in the Ottawa area with the federal government. The mashup and the opportunity between the 2 top city employers, which is government and tech, is incredibly powerful. There is a strong desire and drive within the federal government currently to work more closely with entrepreneurs and SMEs to help address some of their digital pain points and challenges. We've created some pilot projects at Bayview Yards where we're bringing together Canada's Public Service School and the creation of a digital academy where we are directly contributing to the training, digital skills development for our public sector with key areas and divisions including ISED, the ISED division, as well as PSPC and Treasury Board are all key stakeholders in that initiative. Talent development, of course, has many facets. Our core focus in terms of this strategy is truly companies, but that's another very important strategic thrust we're pursuing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Luloff, please.
What is Invest Ottawa doing to ensure that economic development doesn't simply happen in the downtown core? I know that we've got an incredibly bilingual and well-educated workforce in Orleans, and we're not seeing the kind of economic development that we're seeing in other areas of the city. What can Invest Ottawa do to help to ensure that 100,000 people don't end up having to cross the Greenbelt every single day, adding to GHGs, chipping away at our infrastructure, and keeping people away from their families?
So we work with many partners, many of which appeared on the slide that was earlier in the presentation. We recognize that every single corner of our region has incredible talent, incredible opportunity. We have created a nexus of critical mass at Bayview Yards where we believe the collisions and the collaboration is incredibly powerful, and we receive consistent feedback from stakeholders, companies, and innovators right across the city, as well as our 4 post-secondaries, which are equally distributed, and now with many establishing campuses in other parts of the city, that there is still a burning desire to make sure that they can capitalize on infrastructure, talent, and that critical mass of collaborative activity that's happening at Bayview. We are increasingly establishing additional locations, resources being a key challenge, so that's a major focus for us. How do we maximize the return on our investment to you, to the city, to our stakeholders? We have established an office in Canada in the heart of where the major technology cluster is. We now have the Greenbelt site, thanks to Councillor Harder for all of her leadership on that front. That also establishes another nexus of expertise in connected and autonomous vehicles and Bayview. We are always going out. Our teams are on the ground in every corner of the city, working with companies, innovators, researchers, and our post-secondaries to help them fulfill their opportunity within their region and bring them into that larger critical mass and cluster that exists at Bayview and those other locations.
Respectfully, every location that you just mentioned is to the west and to the south of Ottawa. With the LRT coming to Trim Road in 2025, I look forward to working with you to ensuring that we don't send empty trains out to Orleans or away from Orleans every single day. Thank you.
We look forward to working with you on that.
I also live in Orleans, so don't worry about it. I got you.
A good example of a very successful project was when we announced the Amazon 600 jobs in the East End. That's, I think, the single largest job site that we've seen really in the last several years, you know, Shopify being the other big employer. So that was a good example, I think, where we all worked together, and the land was there, and Councillor Blais was very instrumental and supportive of getting them here, and we put in that bid, as you know, for the global headquarters. We're not successful, but I think we impressed them with our skill set and our knowledge, so thank you for that question. Just one question. Launching on July 1st seems like a very patriotic but strange day because everyone's busy with Canada Day activities. Would it not get sort of overshadowed? Who's checking their emails on Canada?
That was a self-imposed deadline that I introduced to the team, and I thank them for their willingness to think about that deadline, but that's more to have our recruitment and marketing technology tools in place, and for us to have started to build the talent communities that will then have the opportunity to work with clients across the scale-up community from July 2nd.
Moreover, we have a soft launch that will be taking place at Accelerate OTT, which is our flagship entrepreneurship conference on the 11th at the NAC. We will be extending complimentary passes to every city councillor. We invite you to join us and come and learn on the ground exactly what we do, how we do it to support the growth of the entrepreneurs and firms in our region.
Thank you all very much. Merci beaucoup for your presentation. Now we'll go on to the Confederation Line LRT update. And we have Mr. Manconi and his team coming up, and I think we have a PowerPoint presentation as well.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of committee. I'm going to provide you with our update on the LRT project, tell you where we are on various elements and the plan to move forward. So you'll recall that RTG submitted a substantial completion notice, which the city reviewed and the independent certifier reviewed as per the project agreement. There's a process that is spelled out in the project agreement. Both the city and the independent certifier advised RTG of our opinion, which was that they had not achieved substantial completion. So that has occurred. And following the receipt of that notice from the independent certifier, we held a workshop with RTG, city staff, and our rail experts. And just a reminder, in terms of rail experts, we have some of the best people in industry that have run rail systems, built rail cars, CBTC systems, and all the other elements that sit with us on every step of the process. The workshop that we had with RTG was to walk them through in detail the opinion letter on the substantial completion from both the city and the independent certifier. We looked at the progress that RTG had done during the review period, the 5-day review period, and to RTG's credit, they continued to work and move things forward. And the session was very productive, and there was consensus and agreement on the outstanding work that needed to be completed for RTG to achieve substantial completion. The point of this slide is to indicate to all of you that there is 100% clarity on the work that needs to be done by RTG to achieve substantial completion. So there's no gray zones, there's a comprehensive list, they know what they need to do, and both parties have agreed to that. So further to that workshop, RTG provided their response to us because they're required to give us a remedy plan. We have looked at that response and it provides their feedback, and we're working very closely with them to ensure that they follow their plan and that they meet the schedules of the work that's remaining. Now, I just need to remind everyone that substantial completion is a very important step in the entire process of this project. It signifies that the project has reached that point where everything is essentially complete, and that's both the construction and the testing. And it applies to all elements of the system, the fixed components, the rail cars, and so forth. And the third bullet is very important. It's embedded in the project agreement. It says there can be no restrictions to that materially impair the city's use of the system. In other words, it cannot be a conditional achievement. And I can tell you that we continue to be unrelenting with RTG, that we're not moving off of what they're required to give us for the $2.1 billion, and I see some councillors nodding. I know that you're in the same space. Many of you have told me that the public is paying $2.1 billion for the system. We expect every single element, and we're not on for anything other than that. So we continue to hold that position, and I know that we've got full support in that regard from both yourself and the public. So we've agreed on the plan with RTG. They've presented it to us, and they need to complete all of the elements: the stations, the operating system, the safety programs, the maintenance readiness, and vehicle readiness is the critical path to completion. You can have the best looking station, landscaping completed, but you need the rail cars to be operating at the level of performance that's prescribed. So you'll recall this slide. You've seen it many, many times. We have been tracking all of these 9 critical elements, and I can tell you that items 2 to 9 are in very good shape. A range of some paperwork that needs to be done to some final elements, and that is tracking well, all stemming from that workshop that I referenced early on. Fleet availability is the area that we continue to be concerned about. And there's 2 lanes with the fleet availability. There's 2 buckets of work. The fleet needs to be virtually defect-free. You'll never get 100% defect-free fleet. And we have agreed with RTG what are the minor things that will permit them to go into service, minor defects associated with the fleet. But we need a very robust fleet that has no major defects. The second bucket or second lane there is demonstrated reliability. So defect-free and highly, highly reliable. And unfortunately, the vehicles are not ready for prime time. They're just not at the state that they need to be there for this system. And we are working with RTG on several elements in terms of how they get them to that state of readiness. If RTG completes all those 9 critical elements, including the fleet, they can then apply for substantial completion. We've been very clear with them: don't waste your time reapplying. Focus all your energy on getting things completed to that high state of reliability. So in terms of the substantial completion process, you'll recall at the last meeting, there was 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, they achieved substantial completion. That did not occur, so they moved to the second lane, which is scenario 2, and they're on the far right end of that process where they restart the review. If they complete things and take our advice and follow it religiously, they will, we probably won't need the full 5 days to review. So we've advised them of that, to stay focused and make sure that all of their contractors, including Alstom, because they own that fleet contract, stay focused on getting things completed. So in terms of the steps moving forward, RTG needs to complete all of the items associated with the 9 critical elements, including the vehicles. If they get those things done, they can resubmit their notice of substantial completion, and then on the assumption that the independent certifier determines that they have achieved it, we can move into point number 4. And many of you have asked, are we in trial running? No, we are not in trial running. I know you see a lot of train movements out there. They need to get through this very important substantial completion part before we give them authorization to move into trial running. And the trial running is, as noted on the slide, they're basically mimicking service, and we are testing the system to ensure that it functions as designed end-to-end, and they're meeting the operating schedules and the operational performance requirements. And it exercises everything on reliability of the main systems and all the subsystems, customer-facing elements, and so forth. And again, the vehicle piece, which is very, very important, it also, going through the 12 consecutive days of trial running, demonstrates vehicle availability and reliability. If they move through successful trial running and the independent safety auditor signs off, RSA is then achieved. So it's turned over to the city, and we need 4 weeks to launch, and many of you have asked why so much time. We need that to get all the unfettered access for our staff to go in there and do other remaining drills and so forth. It's still a construction zone, so you need to wear hard hats and safety boots and so forth in there. We need to go in there and ensure that everything is ready for our customers and that our staff have full access to the system. So with respect to RSA and the launch of the service, we again have been unrelenting in saying that do not give us a date just for the sake of giving us a date. I do not want to drag council through that again. I don't want to drag our customers through it again, where we get a date that is not highly reliable and achievable, or where my team, my staff, and those experts that I talked about have a high degree of confidence that they can achieve the date. So right now, we've been clear with them. They need to focus on the vehicle completion and get the defects cleared up and get the reliability of the fleet to a very high degree. They need to bring, they have brought a very good plan on the vehicle completion plan, how they would move forward, and we need to let that play out to see where they get to on vehicles. So with respect to RSA, Mr. Mayor, members of committee, although RTG was required to give us a date by the end of May, they've asked for 2 additional weeks to monitor the vehicle plan and to see if they and Alstom, their supplier, can get the vehicle fleet to the high standard that it needs to be in order for us to be confident with that. Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, that leads us into RTG has also advised us that given those factors, they will not achieve June 30th date, and we do not have a modified date at this point. We're going to give them their 2 weeks to monitor. I can tell you that we're not just sitting by and waiting for them. In addition to all of the monitoring that we've done, we have brought in more vehicle experts. We are not stepping into the contract with Alstom. We have the authority to do enhanced monitoring. So in addition to what we've been doing, we're now bringing in more expensive experts that have done this stuff. And by the way, the bill goes to RTG because that is a provision in the contract. And we are monitoring every single shift at the plant in terms of where they are and clearing up these defects and getting the fleet where it needs to be. So that has commenced today. We have 1 expert in, 2 experts in today, and another one coming in later this week. They're just waiting for some paperwork at the border crossing. When RTG has a date that they can demonstrate to us is achievable, we can then move into the final preparations to launch, and obviously we'll communicate that to you. And a reminder on point number 5, you know, we are being so rigid in ensuring that things are at a very high standard. We're not building a greenfield system. 75% of your customers will be impacted on day one. It's about 240,000 customers will be impacted. And we also have the complex bus route changes that need to be rolled out as part of this. So we need a system that is functioning as close to perfect as possible. Some have asked about the long stop date. I just wanted to reiterate, I know I issued a memo on this, but we have not given up any rights and privileges and remedy clauses. We have some very strong language in the project agreement that talks about the long stop date, and the long stop is, it marks the 12 months after the contract revenue service availability date, the original one. It's a milestone that enables us to initiate all those remedies and penalties and so forth. We have retained all those rights, and as I've mentioned before, we have not paid RTG, and we're continuing to track all incremental costs, and they will be deducted from RTG's outstanding payments. Now, Mr. Mayor, I also have to talk about the fare freeze. You recall we were targeting July 1st. With these latest developments, we're going to have to think about if you want to extend the fare freeze. We've put together some costing for you of August and September on that slide. I apologize, but timing is of the essence. Monthly passes go on sale on June 16th, and we would need something done by the council meeting of June 12th. We have a Transit Commission meeting, but it's after that, so we need to move quickly on this. And I use this slide to remind RTG that while they may feel that things are complicated at our end, our customers are again feeling it. You're feeling it. And I have to sit before you today and give you this news and jump through hoops to get all these logistics sorted out. So it's not a pleasant day for us to be communicating this to you, but I know RTG is listening right now, and our world is complicated, and again, our customers are going to feel the brunt of this. So the additional fare freeze will be deducted from RTG's payment is the instructions that we're following, so we're adding that to the bill. With respect to our work, we're continuing to do our operational training, our drills, our exercises, and the Ready for Rail campaign continues, and we're also fully detailed, mapped out all various scenarios. We'll adjust accordingly now in terms of potential launch dates to map things out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my presentation. I'll take questions now.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Hubley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on the information that Mr. Manconi and his team have just presented, it's clear to me that we need to move forward on delaying the fare increase that is set for July 1st of this year. I understand that the monthly passes for July will go on sale starting on June 16th, and that's why Mr. Manconi alluded to that date, and that staff have taken some technical steps to change the system so that the increases do not occur. That means we have to make a decision by next week's council meeting on June 12th, and the Transit Commission does not meet until the 19th. Therefore, I'm going to ask council to suspend the rules of procedure next week to walk this on to the June 12th council meeting so that I can move a motion to allow that the fares stay the same level until the train is running.
Great, good initiative. Thank
Would you agree to second that motion, Mr. Mayor?
Happy to.
Thank you. Now, if I may, I'd like to point out that I want to say thank you to Mr. Manconi and Mr. Kanellakis because of their efforts to protect taxpayers and our city in this difficult contract. I know staff are doing their best to hold RTG and their partners like Alstom accountable to their commitments, and I know that the Mayor, Mr. Mayor and Council are placing a lot of pressure on you, Mr. Manconi, to deliver the message to RTG that we are out of patience. It is time for RTG and Alstom and SNC and all the partners of RTG to get their act together and deliver. So one question for you, sir, is can you please confirm that OC Transpo will be able to keep delivering the service that they have been while we await this transition, and that we're ready whenever RTG is ready to do the transition to train?
With respect to launch, Mr. Mayor, Chair Hubley, I can assure you we have a very good plan. We've put a team that's been focused on it for 5 years. I will comment on the bus service. I sent you all a note on the challenges. It is painful out there for the customers. I get all your emails and I see the customer complaint logs. The cancellations are at record highs on routes. We are trying to spread the pain a little bit. I know many of you have met with my staff and continue to meet with them. I'm not here giving excuses. It is where we are, and as that memo said, thanks to RTG, the effect of the construction projects and the compounding stress on the buses that are stuck in the core, and particularly, is because of the delay of the train. And I know that, Mr. Lausch took offense to that a couple of months ago, and I said, no, it's on you. Those trains were supposed to be up and running, and we wouldn't be deadheading buses through the core and being stuck in all this construction. And to our construction partners over in Infrastructure Services, they're doing a great job trying to stagger some of these things with our traffic operations people. But I can assure you, OC Transpo staff are trying their best to get through. And we're at the peak of construction season. I believe there's 88 closures right now that we're dealing and detouring buses through. And we are doing a look ahead on that. But it's a tough commute for OC Transpo customers, and again, I need to thank them for sticking with us because it's been a tough number of years.
And finally, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to get Mr. Manconi to elaborate on something, situation him and I have discussed is one of the issues with the trains right now is doors sticking. And I believe it was Washington, D.C. launched a bunch of new trains and the doors actually opened in service, like while they were moving. So you might want to elaborate on how many cars had to be pulled off the track after that and the disruption to the service.
Yes, doors may seem trivial, but they're a very critical safety feature, both from, they should never open when in service. There's braking systems that activate that in this particular case didn't work in that situation that Chair Hubley's talking about. On ours, what we're dealing with is what's called a sensitive edge. It's a tolerance about how tight they need to close so that people don't get stuck in the doors, or scarves and mitts and boots and things like that. So again, we're being very diligent in that. And I can tell you that both Alstom and RTG on the safety features, again, back to those defects, they know they're non-negotiable. They're not disputing us on those, but they need to focus and get the work done.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to touch on that memo, when I read the memo, I thought, wow, thank you for sending it out and being so honest in it, John, because I think that it laid out where we are. And the same day my staff, who watches transit for us, for my part of the city, had just said to me, I don't know what's going on, but there's something like it's just out of control and I'm not getting responses and things like that. So I really appreciated getting that, but now I'm very, very concerned because what you're saying is if they don't get a handle on fixing this to our satisfaction and to safety satisfaction and to pass the test, what's the backup plan? Because it seems to me we've got staff that we're not supposed to be working here, so whatever that morale might look like, staff that we need to add to, what kind of, what are their, I'm not saying you'd ever hire anybody that wasn't, didn't have the proper accreditation, but they may not be the right fit. What about the equipment itself? Because I know that you said that you're trying to shift it around so that you're sharing the pain, but the pain is pitiful. Like, if you're sharing it now, I mean, I'd like to see what, if you weren't sharing it, looked like. Do you have any comment on any of that?
So I have to thank staff and the unions, because without them, it would be worse. And I can tell you that, well, a couple of things. RTG is getting a big overtime bill and premium bills because the union, in collaboration with us and staff, have given up holidays and long weekends and things like that to make service. And so that's why things could be worse, but we have very good staff and great morale and great labor relations at OC Transpo. I can tell you all the union leaders, I don't know if they're here today, but they're at the same point you are. They want this train launched. because they understand the stress that it's putting on staff. We have Phil Landry and his team, Mr. Kanalakis, the mayor, and Chair Hubley and Chair Blais asked me yesterday to look at a downtown mobility plan, look at what we can do to improve things because we're tight on traffic, and is there anything we can do there? In terms of the equipment, our fleet folks are hanging on to all the buses that we need, so we're okay there. We have the new Nova buses that have come in. There's probably another bill going to RTG because we have to extend the batteries on the hybrid buses. They were under warranty. By now they should have been gone. So I'm just sharing that with you because I have a list a mile long of everything that gets moved, and it's difficult, but we're here to serve you. We're committed. Everybody, I can assure you, the morale at OC Transpo understands that they want to be there for you and for the customers. They don't want to let people down.
So my other question is, are you continuing with parallel work on stage 2? Because stage 2 is approved now. There's not a slowdown. We're not waiting for the LRT to start running before that happens, because for those of us that are waiting for stage 3, that train may never arrive at the rate.
Stage 2 is moving along. Mr. Morgan manages that contract for me. We're doing clearing, brushing, contractor mobilization, both on the north-south and the east-west. So that's already started.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tierney, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to John and your team, I know I contact you, I feel, every week on the bus situation. You've got more drivers on board, I assume, right now to try to head off what seems to be a growing problem of, I don't know if people are calling in sick or they know that they're coming to the end of their career as an operator and they just don't want to come in anymore, but clearly we have a problem. And while we're dealing with it now and you're doing your best to get people in there, we're getting into the summer period, things will slow down, the buses won't be quite as full, we'll be okay, but I think we really need to have a plan for August, September if this train isn't rolling, because that's a completely different proposition. That means probably hiring many, many more people back in. Are we looking at developing a plan like this?
Yes, we have a plan. We have the right operator count. There is a North America shortage on operators, by the way. We used to graduate 25 people per class. I just did a graduation last Friday. There was 2. Now, we are not going to waive our requirements for operators. It's a very tough program to get through. We do have a plan that looks ahead for July, August, and September. There's some active discussions that are about to happen with the unions where we're going to offer premiums for people to give up their vacations. But to be honest with you, some people are tired of the overtime and are saying, look, I got to go see my family this weekend. I can't work every single day. So it's a challenge, but we're balancing it all off. And again, with the cooperation we're getting from the union and staff, we're doing okay. We are not seeing a mass exodus of operators. We have typical challenges of holidays, religious holidays, and summer breaks and things like that we're challenging. But we're moving through it.
So our next update that we have would be, I assume, in July. When we get to that point, I think you get to a point where you have to pull a pin and say, okay, either we know we're going to be good by the start of the school season, the summer, whatever. I mean, the summer, the buses are lighter, things are different, people are at cottages and on vacations and whatever. But when that school year starts, that's a massive impact. So what point do you feel that we have to actually have Plan B in place? Wouldn't it be July, knowing that August, September is right around the corner and the training time, if we have to get more operators? Or I'm just looking for assurances you'll come back with a plan, because I know how full those buses get when university and college starts back in.
Councillor, I can assure you we've done that look ahead, and the balance of the construction season and things like that, we're doing a look ahead on that also. If we're into September, there's nothing to signal that's where we are right now. We need to get through the 2 weeks of monitoring of the vehicles, and then we get the RSA from a date from RTG, and then we'll be back to you.
And last question's related just to the pain that we felt in the communities about the ramp closure. And I know we've talked about 3 weeks after. You put it front burner. I really appreciate that, and thank you. But is there any opportunity, because my understanding it was the ministry and the province that said we couldn't intermingle that much traffic and buses. Is there any opportunity to review that in advance? If we go several more months, you know, we could be getting closer to like 4 years of a ramp closure, and we're really feeling it. I also hear that we're looking at, in certain areas, closing parts of Innes Road to do some construction work as well. So now you're adding all this additional pressure, and we need to look at that ramp being reopened.
Councillor, there's nothing in the short term, but I can tell you that Phil Landry's on our readiness team, and his stream is all the traffic locations, and he's got all that mapped out. If there is a possibility to do something, we'll look again. But right now, it's that ramp has to stay the way it is right now. We are overlaying all the other construction projects, and if there is work on Innes and things like that, as to if things changes, I'll let you know.
Thanks, John.
Councillor Deans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to you, Mr. Manconi, I'd just say that I appreciate and admire your steadfastness, because although this is very frustrating, I agree with you that we cannot accept a substandard system on day one. So it is what it is, but we have to accept that, and I admire that. I just want to understand, this is delay number 5. Is it 5? 4? Delay number 4. They're not going to meet the June 30th deadline. Is there another $1 million penalty associated with that?
The $1 million penalty kicks in when we have a RSA date, so we don't have an RSA date from them yet.
But they were required to give us one by May 31st.
They are required to give us one by May 31st. The project agreement doesn't contemplate if they don't give us one, do they get a $1 million penalty. It's when we get a date, and if they miss that date, they get a $1 million penalty on that.
But they missed the date that they had to give us the date. So
yes.
Doesn't that trigger the $1 million penalty?
No, it's when you have a RSA date that's been given to you. We've checked with our legal team, our external legal advisors. The other thing, and I'm not defending RTG on this, they've asked for the 2-week extension to look at the vehicles and then give us an RSA date, and we've concurred with that. So, because to give us a date now for the sake of giving us a date, we'd just be back to where we were before. So the penalty kicks in when we have a firm RSA date, and if they miss it, it's $1 million.
And have we had ongoing discussions with RTG about this very long growing list of additional costs that the municipality is bearing because of these delays?
They know about it. Doesn't mean they agree with it. But,
so we're going to be in court with them for years settling this?
I don't want to speculate where we'll be. There's steps in the project agreement way before you get to court. But to me, you know, without prejudice, things seem pretty crystal clear to me. They're not ready.
Me too, but
there's no so even the delays and the claims they've put against us that you've heard about a year ago, they're not ready to go. And as Mr. Kanalakis said to me over a year ago, we've got the money. We're not paying them. And the instruction from the city manager was crystal clear to the treasurer: deduct all these costs, and yes, we're going to give you an update on where we are. You saw the previous memo.
Okay, so they're going to be in court with us because we're not handing out, we're deducting all of these costs and we're not giving them that money.
It's a combination of deductions and payments that they've been giving to us continuously for road closures and things like that, all those special clauses. Okay. So that gets deducted from their payments.
Okay. I want to talk about our customers. I heard what Councillor Hubley said. I thought it was a good idea. It does not, in my mind, go nearly far enough. Our customer base right now is beyond frustrated. I had your staff in my office yesterday. We talked about this. Buses just go by because they're full. They don't show up. People are constantly late for work. We have a shortage of bus drivers, and it goes on and on and on. And you have said yourself, the system has become subpar and unreliable. That's a reality, but we're charging them full freight. And to me, that is just not reasonable. We can't charge full fare. Sure, we're not going to increase the fares, fine, but we're still charging full fare for a subpar system, and we're asking our customers to bear with us. And to tell you the truth, as a member of council, I'm kind of tired. I'm done with defending it. It's indefensible to continue to charge full fare for subpar system. And we want our customers, we need them to stick with us. I admire the men and women and children in this city who have stuck with us this long, because there is a lot of temptation to go another route at this point. And so for that reason, what I think we need to do is look at a fare reduction until this system opens. And you can add that on to RTG's bill as far as I'm concerned, but if there's a 30% subpar service, then we should reduce the fares 30%. And until the system opens, we should have that reduction in fares. And I don't think any one of us can defend what's happening with our system right now to our customers. And I think as a member of council, I need to be able to go and say, you know what, we appreciate you sticking with us. We know we've got structural problems with our system right now that are beyond our capacity to fix until we get this train system open, and for that reason, we are going to reduce your fares. And I think council should agree to that, so you can expect me to put that motion to council next week.
You'll come up with a funding source as well if you're going to put that.
Well, it'll
because
be
it's easy to
RTG will
spend
pay,
money, Counselor.
RTG pay for it. They've caused it. They can pay for it.
No. I don't think that's realistic. I think a freeze that Councillor Hubli has brought forward makes the most sense. Okay, Councillor, see here, Blais, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I want to touch on the traffic issues that Councillor Tierney touched on very quickly, and obviously our prolonged closure of the 417 ramp and the frustration that has caused. Given that Orleans residents have faced this for 4 or 5 years now, why would we authorize the reduction of the on-ramp at Nicholas and the overpass at Innes Road at the same time?
I wish I had the answer to that, but MTO went ahead and did that despite our advice, Mr. Chair.
And have we relayed any concerns to them about those closures and the impact that they're having on residents of Orleans and Gloucester?
Yes, we have. I know the mayor's office has spoken to them, and my staff at my level and at Phil Landry's level have spoken to them.
So this is transportation service for the people. The budget contemplated service expansions following the introduction of LRT. Are those service expansions delayed as a result of today's news?
That's correct. You'll recall last time when we talked about the rollout, the $5.1 million in investments, which we're very eager to launch, which helps everyone, can only be launched after the train is in service.
And remind me, was there a budget pressure to put those service improvements in place as part of the Transit Commission budget?
Yes, it was $5.1 million.
So was that pressure to buy buses, or was it for the operating of the?
That's operations.
So are we saving that operating expense as a result of the delay? And if so, how are we booking it, I guess, to ensure that it's not diverted somewhere else?
I'm going to look to the treasurer. I mean, we're not spending the money, so it would be a saving off the bottom line. But in terms of the booking, I'll ask the treasurer if she has any comments.
It was added to the budget, and if it's not spent, it just falls to the bottom line.
So is there, given that we can't actually put this service in place, is there another way in which OC Transpo can use those funds to provide better service without actually expanding these bus routes in the interim? Like the money is there and on the books.
That speaks to Councillor Tierney's plan. We're looking at all those elements and things like that. You're driven by bus count, which we're in very good shape, and operators. So the piece that you need the resource challenge is operators. So, but I can assure you that every single bus that we can put out, we put out every day.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Great, thank you. Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Manconi, for your update. I certainly agree that you're in a very tough position, and I just want to let you know publicly my steadfast support for you. I do think you're the right man for the job, and I do appreciate how you've handled all the bumps throughout this process. The train carriages, you elaborated on the door issue. Are there any other issues with the carriages that are significant enough to let us know about today?
There's 5 elements, and I'll ask Mr. Morgan to elaborate if we need to. There's the door issues. There's a valve on the braking system that needs to be inspected. It's tied to the pressure vessel, so there's some defective valves. The issue is there's 5 of those on each train. They need to check all 34 times 5, whatever that math is, and then replace them and fix them. There's a customer-facing communication system, which on the surface seems simple, but they're all tied to the subsystem, so they're feeding the next stop and so forth. The 4th one is, I believe, Mr. Morgan will correct me, there's a screen for operators if they're on alternate routes that they have to pick certain lists so that feeds the next customer service stop announcement. And I'm drawing a blank for the 5th. There's a contact issue, or a contact component from the pantograph up to the system that needs to be checked if they're defective. We had 1 incident of that, and they just need to, again, do a fleet check to make sure that those are addressed. The time-consuming ones are the doors, because there's a retrofit, there's a procedure, and I just share this with you, Councillor, so that everybody has a good sense on, how hard can it be to fix a door. 14 sets of door on a train. They have to find the problem, get an engineer to map out the solution. They then do a prototype test, has to be signed off by a safety auditor. Then they retrofit the fleet and then re-inspect it all. So it's time-consuming. So that and the defective valve on the pressure vessel are the 2 most time-consuming one.
On your list of outstanding issues, you really emphasized that the carriage issue, the train carriage issue. Other than the train carriages, what are the other top issues that's holding up this project?
Just having good, consistent days. We've had some very good days. We've had some challenging days. So but what I mean by that is launch starts at 4:30 in the morning where they launch the trains. There's some that have been very, very good. There's some that we've had either a power issue, a train control system issue. Today we had a power issue that knocked down some of the system. Those are all things that get teased out during testing and commissioning, so it's a good thing that we're finding those things out. The issue is, in the perfect world, we'd have all 34 vehicles and we'd be doing everything concurrently. So it's the critical mass that you get from having the entire system being stressed. Right now, because I don't have 34 reliable vehicles, I can't see how those all interact with all the other elements.
I'm just going to assume that since we started testing, there may have been dozens, if not hundreds of issues which have been identified and fixed. We're sort of at the final end where some of the key outstanding issues. Has there been any issue that's been insurmountable to be fixed? Is there anything that you just have repeatedly tried to fix that you haven't been able to? Or has everything that you've attempted to fix been fixed successfully and we've just got the outstanding issues at this point?
No, you're quite right. There's been thousands of issues, which again is typical of a startup of this magnitude. And the experts have been brought in to address them on RTG's side. There's been some complicated things, and I'll give credit where credit is due. They have stepped up and brought people from around the world to address those issues. We're in the final stages, and the advisors that I've brought in are saying that if we get the reliability system-wide to the degree that it needs to with the 34 vehicles, it's really down to the vehicles.
2 last points. One is, I'm not debating what I've heard here about a fare freeze or a fare reduction, but are there any other options that can be considered for council to alleviate some of the reliability issues that doesn't resolve or involve a financial commitment? One thing could be, and don't laugh at this, but is actually reducing some service in areas to improve overall service. So maybe you have routes that have multiple routes being run per hour. You take maybe one out to really help another route that has consistent problems is that being considered?
It's a great idea, Councillor, and we are doing that. Routes like the 94, I believe, are very, very frequent service at peak, and so if there needs to be a cancellation there, we'll cancel that because there's another one in the next 5 minutes versus canceling a route that only runs every 15 or 20 minutes. We're doing all that. The last thing I want to do right now is come to you and say we're going to scale back service across the board. I know you're not suggesting that, but we are thinking about all those things, and I do welcome any idea on how we can manage those things. But we are adjusting very frequent routes. If we need to bleed off a trip, we'll bleed off of one of those if we need to.
And just the last thing, to build on Councillor Tierney's point about, the September crush or rush that we have, the influx of volume with post-secondary starting up and people coming back. When does either FEDCO or the Transit Commission get an outline for that service? One, if the trains are running, but also if the trains aren't running. And God forbid, winter of 2019, we cannot have, if the trains aren't running by this coming winter, we can't have the same type of service that we had this past winter. So when would we have that discussion about putting some real resources into our routes to ensure we don't have the same reliability or unreliability issues that we had in this past winter?
Again, we're looking ahead. If there's anything that signals to me that we're going past September, October timeframe, I, like you, am not going to go through another winter like last year. And so it's a different discussion that we need to have. Right now, the focus is the service that we have now. We'll get a bit of relief when the schools let out. We are challenged with Red Blacks games, Blues Fest, all the special events and additional detours. But the team has been looking ahead on all those things. And we do have some updates coming to Transit Commission on rollout and things like that in the June meeting, so there'll be lots of time to ask questions on those matters. I'm just looking at Chair Hubley in that regard. So,
great, thank you. Councillor Cavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. I feel your pain. So does a lot of our customers as well, of course. I don't know what to say, but it's been tough. I appreciate Councillor Hubley's idea to have the motion, and I'd be happy to second it on the fare freezes at council. I think that Councillor Deans has raised some very good points about the cost. We're coming up to September 2nd, which is the anniversary of cuts that were made in anticipation of this LRT system. And they were cuts. This has not been status quo that we were just waiting for this train to open. And as you know, a lot of people suffered from those cuts because they were not on the traditional going downtown routes. They were on routes that went through communities, and it's been a tough winter. Very, very tough winter for those people on the number 11 route, and I'm still hearing about it. And I'd like to know, if it comes up to September 2nd, that's the one-year anniversary, and we do not have the LRT in place, can we look at bringing back these routes?
Two things. Yes, that speaks to what Councillor Brockington addressed, the look ahead, and Councillor Turney. It will be a challenge, but again, I don't want to go through another year, and you're absolutely right. It's a year that we did those changes based on RTG telling us they were ready, and they weren't. And my second comment is just a suggestion, just let RTG know how frustrated you are, Councillor, because I remember our very first meeting. You've been adamant that those customers are going through that pain. This is on RTG. They need to step up their game and get this thing delivered.
I'd be very happy to, because I hear it constantly. Anybody who lives along Richmond Road, all those routes, we've got high-density areas, loads of seniors who are all suffering, and they send me notes daily. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Leeper, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of maybe more detailed questions. I take it there is a vehicle completion plan. My understanding from what you said is that that vehicle completion plan really comprises 5 main elements. There's the doors issue. You need to check a valve on the braking system. There is a customer-facing communication system. There is a screen, I take it, on the vehicle that demonstrates when the next stop is. What was that? I don't understand the 5th item you mentioned.
So the 5th item was a line contactor. It's related to the power system on the train. So it's a modification and failure that they've discovered as part of running the fleet. They need to go through the fleet and make that change. It's on the roof of the vehicle, so it's a little bit harder to get to, but it's part of the overall program. I would say on that list, the 2 heavy hitters are the brakes and the doors. The number of elements, the number of pieces that they need to get to update and getting those vehicles through the shop to do that work, that's probably the heavy lift. So it's really measuring their progress against those 2 items out of that list of 5.
And did they give you a time frame for how long they expect it to take for their vehicle completion plan?
They've given us a preliminary production rate. We haven't seen them achieve those production rates in the past. So we have a production rate for this week. As John mentioned, we have a team of additional personnel on site to monitor that production. And we're going to do a check-in with them on Monday to see if they've achieved what they set out to achieve this particular week in terms of that production, and then use that to essentially forecast out when they, based on the achieved production rate, when they would actually complete the entire fleet.
But what have they asserted in terms of the timeline?
What if they, sorry?
What have they asserted in terms of the timeline? How long have they told you that it will take to do?
Well, for example, they've suggested that they could get through 4 vehicles a day on the brake issue.
And how many vehicles are experiencing the brake issue?
Well, we need to do a complete fleet check.
The entire, okay.
We need to test the entire fleet. They have a test procedure in place. Some of those units will need to be replaced. They're saying they can get through 4 a day. Their plan starts today with the 4 a day. Okay. So we're going to check in on Monday and see where they are against that 4 a day.
Okay. The power issues that John was describing, why does the system lose power? Is it a defect with the TPSS? Why does the system lose power from time to time?
So on an overhead catenary system or a third rail system, it's not uncommon for the power to trip out. If you have a vehicle that traverses, it's a section insulator, sometimes you get skipping in the interface between the vehicle and the overhead catenary. That can cause it to momentarily trip it out. Right now, we've got 1 substation that we've seen trip out 2 or 3 times in the last week. And so that's obviously not just a trivial thing. We need to check that and check what the root cause for that is and see why that's happening.
What does trip out mean?
It means the power turns off. You can turn it back on remotely, but if that's happening on a repeat, it will happen occasionally. And typically you can just turn the power back on. It's not an issue. You continue in service. But once you start seeing it repeating and happening multiple times over the period of a week, you really need to spend the time to go into the substation, do a root cause analysis, and understand why it's happening. It can happen from time to time, but if you see it happening multiple times in a week, something's going on, some repair needs to be completed.
Are those complicated repairs?
I would say of all the systems, as part of an LRT, an electric LRT, traction power, electric systems are typically the most mature and the most stable of the systems, and so typically the suppliers are able to resolve those issues quickly and get to the bottom of it.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you for all of that. With respect to looking forward to September, if our LRT is not running by then and we need to have a plan B, does that involve purchasing more buses in addition to making sure that we have enough operators?
So the bus count is fine because we're hanging on to the old buses. Okay. We're not releasing the old fleet. Hence my comment earlier on about the hybrids. They were scheduled to go, but we're going to extend the warranty on the batteries and so forth. Operators, the operator count generally in September, we're in pretty good shape because vacation period's over and so forth, but that's some of the discussions that we're having with the unions as to how we lock those people down, even if we have to pay them some premiums to be available. Retirees are also an option that we can ask them to defer the retirements and so forth, so we are working on all plans.
Okay. And then finally, a really small item, those fare machines that are in front of the LRT stations, they aren't fully functional at this point. Is there any opportunity to get those open before the entire system opens?
All the machines, the vending machines and the fare gates are fully functional and have been tested end to end. They're ready to go. We have not, on the ones that face out to the public streets, we haven't turned them on. We've turned them off because we want to do a comprehensive launch with them. So it is part of Plan B that if we want to start leveraging that technology, we will.
People are trying to use them right now. It's obviously very convenient, and those stations are conveniently located. So if there is an opportunity to get those open sooner, I'm sure the traveling public would appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Eglai, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and John, thank you for the presentation. A couple of quick questions. Councillor Tierney had mentioned, of course, that summer is coming, and we all hope that's true, though lately that's a little unclear with the temperatures. But he made the comment that should give us a bit of a break in terms of. Can you comment on that from an operational perspective?
What it does is it frees up resources on the school bus routes. So when schools let up, then we have some relief there, and we can redeploy those assets.
Okay, and I assume our ridership goes down a little bit as well with people on vacation and what have you.
Correct.
Okay, can you tell us today, and if not today, certainly for council, what the cost of a 30% reduction would be?
Yes.
And the last question is for legal. Can we have sorry, it's a question for you, Mr. O'Connor. In light of the possibility of a motion for a 30% reduction coming forward and the potential funding source being RTG, could we maybe have an opinion from legal as to the likelihood of collecting that additional 30% from RTG prior to the motion or at the time of the motion for next council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll do so, and we'll work with external legal counsel on that.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, those are all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak or ask questions? Councillor Deans?
Could you also provide to us a running total to date of all of the costs that we are accruing because of the delay?
Yes, we'll bundle everything that we have. It may not be total, but it's a running tab.
Thank you.
Est-ce qu'il y a des autres questions? Just on this issue, obviously, like many people here and throughout the city, I am fed up and frustrated with the delays. We have been working very hard. Our staff have been working very hard to ensure that we have a system that was going to be ready a year ago. And we recognize on these big builds, there are delays. You know, you look at the Kitchener-Waterloo, they were delayed 2 years, City of Toronto, several years, Boston, 10 years. That's not looking for an excuse, but it tells that building a system of this complexity in a built-up area does have its challenges. But earlier this morning, I called the president and CEO of Alstom and let him know in no uncertain terms that we were fed up with his company's performance, and I'll send the same message to RTG when I speak with their president. I also invited the president of Alstom to come to Ottawa within the next 10 days to 2 weeks so that we could have a high-level meeting with the president of RTG, the president of Alstom, myself, and our senior city staff. And he's accepted that invitation. And I told him it's not going to be a pleasant meeting because we are fed up with the excuses and the system not working to our satisfaction. And obviously, we're not going to accept a substandard product on day one. Can you imagine that we accept the system with these few flaws, and the first train out the gates, the doors don't shut properly, and the whole system is backlogged? We're not going to put ourselves, and more importantly, we're not going to put our customers and the residents of Ottawa in this difficult situation. So certainly for me, the work that has to be done, we are putting enormous pressure on the consortium. They are not being paid, which is the biggest club we have, to deal with this consortium that has not lived up to our expectations. And I certainly appreciate the desire to give people a financial break. I think a freeze is something that is affordable and doable and would be justifiable to charge that back to RTG, but I'm not going to go and support a cut in the cost, because our costs remain consistent, and then the price then just goes up even higher when we have to make up for that lost revenue. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So while it might be politically popular to pander, to allow people to go and hope that their bus pass is going to cost them, $30 or $40 less, that is the money we need to continue to expand the service. And we heard from many members of council how they want to go and expand service. Well, you can't expand service when you're cutting the fare box. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm looking forward to that meeting, because I've told the president at Alstom the frustration that we feel in this community, and also it's a reputational hit on his company. He wants to do more business in North America, and at this stage we can't give him a very good reference if another city comes looking for comment at Alstom. And I recognize that RTG is the lead consortium, but the biggest issue we have, and we've had for the last 3 briefings, are the vehicles. It's not the stations, it's not the all of the rails and the overhanging wires and so on. Alors certainement, pour moi, je suis déçu avec la performance de Alstom, et je parlais avec le président qui habite aux France pour inviter le président de visiter la ville d'Ottawa pour une réunion avec moi et le président de RGC et aussi le personnel comme M. Manconi et M. Kanellakis pour discuter nos concerns et non but, parce que c'est vraiment, il y a beaucoup de frustration avec cette compagnie, et ce n'est pas juste pour les passagers qui, comment on dit, rely on aussi transport chaque jour pour un service. Et le service et le niveau de service n'est pas acceptable à ce moment. Alors, ce n'est pas une critique de M. Manconi ou son équipe. Really, it's a frustration that I think we all have, and you can multiply that probably 10 times with John Manconi, because he's having to deal and live with this frustration each and every day. So we appreciate the position you're in and the fact that you continue to push your colleagues at RTG forward. And I think my hope is that with the president of Alstom coming here, he will see firsthand how frustrating this process has been. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Merci pour votre présentation. The next and last item on the agenda is the City of Ottawa Ward Boundary Review. Councillor Tierney has a motion, and I know Councillor Hubley had a question. So we'll put the motion on the floor first. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Whereas subsection 217(1) of the Municipal Act 2001 authorizes municipalities to change the composition of its council, and therefore is no provision in such bylaw to be appealed by the local appeal tribunal. And whereas the current composition of the Ottawa City Council is confirmed by the bylaw 2005-534, which was approved by Council in November 30th, 2005, and provides commencing 2006 to 2009 term of office that City Council be composed of a mayor elected by general vote and 23 members elected on the basis of 1 member per ward. Whereas staff reported title City of Ottawa Ward Boundary Review 2019 to 2020 recommends that the independent consultant be retained to conduct a comprehensive ward boundary review for the City of Ottawa pursuant to municipal statutory authority to divide and redivide the municipalities of the wards or dissolve existing wards under subsection 222(1) of the Act, consistent with the terms of reference attached in document number 3. Whereas it recommends the ward boundary review would be conducted without predetermined outcomes with respect to the ward boundaries and the goal of achieving effective representation, as well as various legislative and case law requirements and other objectives set out by staff report in terms of reference. Whereas following the recent events related to the City of Toronto's ward boundaries, that staff report recommends the City Clerk and Solicitor be directed to send a letter to the Premier of Ontario and the Ontario Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to advise that Council's decision with respect to the comprehensive ward boundary review for the City of Ottawa, whereas the City Clerk and Solicitor would provide an opportunity to advise the Ontario Government and the City of Ottawa does not intend to exercise the authority under the Act to change the current composition of Council through the proposed ward boundary review, whereas further the municipality's statutory authority to establish Council's composition, Council may direct an independent consultant to bring forward the ward boundary options that retain the current Council composition while achieving effective representation and the other intended outcomes of the review. Whereas Council would not preclude a consultant from testing the concepts of increasing or decreasing the ward numbers as part of the primary work on the review prior to bringing it forward to Council. Only those viable recommendations of ward boundary options that retain current Council composition and accomplish principles, requirements, and objectives as described above. Therefore, be resolved that the City Clerk and Solicitor's letter to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Municipal Affairs also specifies that Council intends that the ward boundary review be conducted on the basis of retaining the current number of wards, being 23, each represented in a single elected member, in addition to the Mayor being elected by general vote as outlined in Bylaw 2005-534. And be it further resolved that the terms of reference for the City of Ottawa's 2019 to 2020 Comprehensive Ward Boundary Review be outlined in Document 3, amended to direct the independent consultant to bring forward the ward boundary options that retain the existing Council composition as described in the motion and pending any feedback received from the Ontario Government in response to the City Clerk and Solicitor letter. Thank you.
Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question will go to the clerk, who I believe will be leading the review. I just want to make sure that the numbers that are included in the report here, the projections, are validated, because I've had some issues with the ones that are there, and there's just hasn't been an opportunity to work with staff on that. So if I get confirmation that they will reach out to the individual councillors and also validate the numbers, I'd be very happy. Oh, there he is.
Mr. Chair, absolutely. We'll be looking at that, and for the future projections, we'll do all of that.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, is it Luloff? Dudas? Yes, sorry.
Just a quick question. The independent consultant, are you adding the criteria that they be Ottawa-based so that they have an understanding of our makeup of our city?
No, we're not, Mr. Mayor. I think that would limit the pool even further. It's a fairly shallow pool right now with regards to the expertise. We would certainly look forward to the process and ensure that they are familiar with the City of Ottawa on that, but I wouldn't make it a condition of their hiring.
Is that, there was plenty of examples of other municipalities that have gone through this or are going through this. Have they used consultants that are based in their own municipalities, or do they tend to go further afield?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that.
I'm just trying to understand if it's better to have somebody who lives and understands our city do this work, or if it's better to have somebody from outside do this work.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Mayor, it's probably going to be 6 of one, half dozen of the other. What we're looking for is an independent, impartial, objective person who can provide that professional expertise. But I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage to be in the City of Ottawa or external to it. But I'm not aware of any particular consultants that are here that could do the work.
Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm just hearkening back to what happened in the City of Toronto last year when they undertook a full review and made recommendations and were moving forward in their municipal election based on the review that they had done, the ward boundary changes, and then the heavy hammer of the Ford government came down and just wiped out all of that and changed it to aligning with federal and provincial boundaries. And so I'm just feeling that it would seem prudent that we seek an assurance from the Ford government that, one, it's not their intention to align our boundaries with the provincial or federal boundaries, and that, two, that they would, presuming we spend taxpayers' money on this exercise, that they would respect the outcome of the recommendations that this council approves ultimately. Because otherwise, if they're just going to come in and realign all our boundaries for us, then it doesn't really make a lot of sense in my mind to spend taxpayers' dollars going through this exercise. So I guess this question to you, Mr. Mayor, is would you be prepared to seek an undertaking from the Ford government that they're not moving ahead with realigning our boundaries to provincial or federal boundaries, and that they would be respectful of the outcome of this review?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Clerk, that's the intent of one of the paragraphs in the motion, is, and we put it in specifically because we didn't want to get surprised by the provincial government. We're saying, look, we're going to go and start this process, but tell us ahead of time if you have plans to change our composition. Otherwise, we won't waste our time and our taxpayers' money. Is that a fair assessment, Mr. Clerk?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
And I think the other thing is that I was very supportive of the recommendation that we, and Councillor Tierney's motion is very succinct on this, that this is not an exercise to create more politicians. This is an exercise to readjust boundaries, because there are some instances where some councillors have very large populations and others less so. But we're very unique in Ottawa because we have to take into account the fact that we have 4 rural communities as well. So, you know, the task is really before the independent consultant, plus our own city election staff who know the boundaries inside and out. And I've said I don't want to see a whole bunch of money put into hiring a consultant when we can do a lot of the legwork with our own election staff that are experts on where the boundaries are, where people live, and so on. So thank you for that. Councillor Harder, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just would like to, as one of 2 people at the table that were here in 2006, and all the fun that went down then, having some councillors talk about how they had to keep one side of the street because the people really liked them there. I want to make sure that a couple of things happen this time. I think that there's not a lot of reason to throw out the baby with the bathwater where not necessary. We have some wards that are the perfect size that don't have growth anticipated of any nature, a couple hundred, 400, 500 people. We have areas like Barhaven, for example, where you have 1.3 representatives for over 90,000 people. Just on the factor of representation by population, we fail abysmally there. And we have other areas in the city. So what I'm suggesting is that we make sure that whomever we hire is looking at it with a lens of practical, and then where the real issues of growth are that we know, and we know that. We absolutely know that. Mr. Willis's staff has got that information at their fingertips. I don't think this has to be the cost that other people have paid, as the mayor says. I think that logically, if we're sure that we can stick with our current numbers, I think that there's a logical path forward that needs confirmation on things like the rural identity, further to the 2006 ruling, where the councillor of that time was successful in causing a lot of what we have today, and adding 2 councillors at the time, as I recall. But we're in the same predicament that we were back then. Back then, we had 3 wards that represented 25% of the population and had 3 votes. We're kind of in the same place. So let's not go to the extremes. Let's not fix what isn't broken. Is there a way to accomplish that, Mr. O'Connor?
Mr. Mayor, I certainly will take that direction, and I think it's understood that with the motion that's on the table, if it's passed by committee and council, that very is clearly committee and council's direction, that there's not to be additional elected representatives, and the 23 wards are where you want to stand. So absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Moffat, please.
Thank you. Just on the motion, and the project parameters, how do they really work together? So you start from a point, when we did this in 2005, it wasn't done from a point of, okay, go and review it, but this is the number we want. How do you deal with the principle of effective representation, looking at population growth for the next 3 terms, and determine that, well, today we have 23, and 12 years from now we want to have 23? How does that make any sense?
Mr. Mayor, I'll start with an analogy because I think it's relevant. This happens all the time with respect to federal and provincial ridings, that the chief electoral office in each of the provinces or federally is given a number, and they work from that number, and that number is meant to work for 10 years, how many elections there will be a year. So this is not new. With respect to municipalities, the legislation states that it is council to determine the composition, to determine its composition. And so here we have a process that we're embarking upon now. We have, in my opinion, a robust terms of reference, but a direction possibly from council, depending on whether or not the motion carries, that there be 23. And so it seems to me that an independent expert is going to be able to look at that, apply the principle of effective representation, and over analysis, it's going to take 12, 18 months, is going to be able to come forward with a defensible conclusion for 23 wards.
So in 2005, part of the review, one of the challenges we had in one of the wards, Old Goulburn Ward, was that it was shifting too much to one side. So one councillor could get elected purely on the Stittsville polls, and the rest of the Goulburn polls were irrelevant to that. You have that risk where you create that balance, and I've got no problem with the fact that Rideau Goulburn has a portion of Barrhaven and a portion of Stittsville. I'd have no problem if Rideau Goulburn took more of Barrhaven. The challenge you have is that when you get certain wards, Cumberland for instance, where the urban population is getting bigger and bigger and bigger into the rural side, portion of that ward, the rural population in that ward is therefore underrepresented in that ward. You're going to keep your 4 rural wards, I get that. But if you don't create the proper balance across all the wards, for instance, Barrhaven Ward itself, not Barrhaven Riverside South, Barrhaven itself should be 2 wards. If not now, definitely in 10 years. And Riverside South and Finley Creek should itself be 1 ward. So if you don't create the option of coming back with looking at what 25 councillors looks like, or what 18 councillors looks like, or whatever you want to do, if you don't do the proper review without being hamstringed by a number, I don't feel that what we're going to have in the end is a proper review.
Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned, whoever the city retains is going to have to take into account the factors that Councillor Moffat has identified and will come back with a recommendation. I certainly don't want to prejudge what that would be as I sit here.
All right.
Okay. Anyone else on this item? So we have the motion by Councillor Tierney, carried, and the second by Councillor Moffat, and the main report is amended. Carried. All right. Notice of motion for consideration of subsequent meeting. Yes. In motion? No. Do we have any written inquiries? Councillor Tierney would just like to speak to item 9 because a member of his community has arrived here to was not able to be here for when we dealt with it. So, Councillor.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And forgive me, I would have certainly had Erin O'Manick from the Gloucester Emergency Food Cupboard come forward. Thanks, Erin. Give a wave back there. She does great work in our community, and we're very excited about item number 9, the city's commitment to getting more affordable housing in the neighborhood and how this can really impact that food cupboard in that community. So we're very proud of this, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to acknowledge that.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Other business, autre question, adjournment. Carried. Thank you. Merci. Meeting adjourned.